Hello everybody, my name is Ulrich with YouFixItAuto, and today I'm going to be showing you how I'm going to be changing my water pump and thermostat on my 2000 GMC Sierra. I'm going to be using quality OEM parts, and I'll be sure to link these parts down in the description below. And the process is going to be very similar with any 99 to 2006 GM vehicle with a 5.3 liter engine. This is what the new water pump looks like that I'm going to be putting in the truck. This is the new thermostat and thermostat housing. I'm also going to be replacing the lower radiator hose. And I'm going to be using sandpaper, new hose clamps, and gaskets. If your water pump did not come with gaskets, be sure to order some. Also, I made sure I had coolant since I'm going to be draining a lot of it. So now I can dive into it by removing the negative terminal. I don't want this connected since I'm going to be near the fan clutch. Next, I'm going to remove the airbox by loosening up the hose clamps on both sides. And when the hose clamps are loose, you can simply just pop off the airbox and set it aside. With my airbox out of the way, I noticed that my throttle body was very dirty. So with the rag, I'm just going to give it a wipe down. And look at how much dirt we were able to take off. And now it's time for me to remove the upper fan shroud, which requires removing two 10mm screws here and here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it with a socket and ratchet. That's one. And that's two. Next we remove 4 panel clips, one in the front, one in the back, and 2 on the other side. I noticed on mine that one is missing on the back side. So with the flathead screwdriver, I'm just going to bring up the center part just enough for me to be able to grab it with my hands and wiggle it out. With all of those out, I can just pop off this hose here, and that's enough for me to be able to remove my upper fan shroud. Next, the goal is to just drain the coolant completely. So you just grab this hose that you see here, and then you have it so that it points down and into a drain pan. And then from underneath, just point it directly to the drain pan, open up the petcock, and then drain all the coolant.
Now what I like to do is over here on the other side we have the lower radiator hose, which you can see because it's connected to the lower part of the radiator here, and there's a clamp over here that you could just take off, which will allow you to drain the coolant just in case you don't want to worry about breaking the plastic petcock on the other side.
Here is an upper view so you can see the lower radiator hose from up top. It goes from the bottom of the radiator over to the thermostat. And so pliers, we can just remove it, making sure there's a drip pan underneath for it to catch all of the coolant that's going to be coming out of the lower radiator hose. And then I'm going to finish removing the lower radiator hose by taking off this hose clamp here. Locking pliers can make this job a little easier. Once you remove it off, you can take off the hose the rest of the way. Comparing it to the new one, it's identical in every way. See, and this is why I decided to replace it. As you can see, with time, it expanded a lot, and this will eventually break and cause a leak. So yeah, this is junk. Now we can remove the 2 heater hoses on the side of the water pump. One is a screw type, which means it's been replaced before, and the other is a clamp style. After removing those, you could just take off both heater hoses and make sure you have a drip pan underneath. Next, with an adjustable wrench and a hammer, you could take off the fan clutch. Just fit it on the nut in the back and hit it a couple times to loosen it. And then you should be able to remove it the rest of the way.
Before you take out your Serpentine belt, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you have your belt routing diagram. If you don't happen to have this, or it may be missing, then you could find these online, or you can even visit an AutoZone and ask them to print out a belt routing diagram for you.
So with the socket and ratchet, we can just twist it in order to remove the tension off the belt, and then remove the belt.
With the belt out, be sure to inspect the belt to make sure that there's no cracks or anything on it. Otherwise, this will need to be replaced. But since this is good, this is going to go back into the truck.
I'm going to remove the upper radiator hose by loosening this twist style clamp. And with patience, you can pop it out.
I'm going to remove the whole assembly as one, so that includes the tensioner, the thermostat, and the whole water pump, which requires me removing 3 bolts here and 3 bolts on the other side. To give you a better view, there's going to be a bolt here, 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 and then here, here, here. Those are the 6 you need to take out in order to remove this whole assembly. We're going to crack loose these.
You can take it all the way out, but to make it easier on myself, I'm going to be using an electric ratchet to be able to remove it all the way. Now a pro tip, because sometimes these are different sizes or they warp, is to put them onto the new part exactly where they were on the old part. It'll save you time, since that way you won't have to figure out where the bolts go. Now on this water pump, they are all the same size, but with the heat, sometimes it warps the threads. And now it's time to compare the old water pump with the new water pump. Here's the old and here's the new. You're going to want to compare that all the mounting holes are the same, that the bolts are all there as well. And upon inspection, I noticed that I was actually missing a bolt on my thermostat. This may have been the cause for a small coolant leak on my engine. So I ordered a bolt from GM, and I'm going to have to wait to put that one on. Since I'm going to be reusing this bolt, I'm going to use an electric ratchet to remove it. And I also like to compare the old part with the new part. The new part has more weight to it. It feels a lot better built, so this is definitely out. And then I'm going to remove the bolts from the tensioner. That way I can put the tensioner on the new water pump. It's always good to inspect the tensioner, making sure that the pulley spins freely and that it doesn't have any squeaks. And then attach it to our new water pump. And not too tight, since I'm going to be torquing this later.
Now if you were just replacing the thermostat, then you would want to make sure that the surface was clean. But since we're replacing the water pump and the thermostat, then we're just going to have to make sure that there's a gasket on there, which luckily it comes with.
And the trick to make the install go easy is just to stick the bolt through with the gasket on and then screw it in by hand. Making sure that the gasket on the other side aligns with the hole, because we're going to be torquing this down later. So both gaskets were stuck, so I had to pry these off. And with a sandpaper or a plastic scraper or a wire brush, we're going to clean up the surface where the gasket mounts, making sure it's a nice smooth surface. And now this whole assembly is ready to go in. I'm going to leave the top bolt as the one missing, so that way it's easy to get to, and remember to remove this cap. Now with the bolts through the new housing, I'm just going to make sure that the gaskets are on there to make it easier for install. And then I can put it back into place, and torque these ones down to 24 pound-feet of torque. Then torque the thermostat to 12 pound-feet of torque, making a mental note that the top bolt is missing. And then the 3 tensioner bolts to 37 pound-feet of torque. Next, attach the 2 heater hoses until they're flush with the water pump. And then attaching and tightening down the lower radiator hose on both sides with the new hose clamps. Making sure all of them are nice and tight. And then attaching the upper radiator hose. I ran out of hose clamps, so I'm going to be reusing this clamp-on style hose clamp on the last heater hose. Using the routing diagram, I'm going to attach the serpentine belt back on. And the way that it goes underneath the idler pulley, over the alternator, down by the power steering pump, around the water pump, down by the crankshaft pulley, and over by the tensioner. Triple checking my work, making sure it's routed correctly, and that the belt won't slip off, because that would be bad. Next, just attach the fan clutch until you can't turn it anymore without it turning with you. You can test if you still have a good fan clutch, if it still has resistance. If it spins freely, then you're going to have to replace it. Now we can attach our upper fan shroud. Put in the panel clips to keep it in place. And then tightening down these 2 bolts, making sure they're just snug. I'm going to attach the airbox back on and tighten down the hose clamps. And normally you top off the coolant, but since I'm going to be making a video on how to do a coolant flush, then I'm just going to leave mine empty for now. And that's it, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, then please like, subscribe, and share in order to help this channel grow. And let me know what else you guys would like to see done. Thank you guys so much for watching.